Kaieteur Radio.
Good day. Welcome to your news at noon on Kaieteur Radio. I'm Kevin Smith. After examining the extent to which many African oil-producing nations have been used and abused by oil companies and their subcontractors and/or related parties, Oxfam America, a transparency watchdog, says Guyana and other new oil players must take note and urgently implement mechanisms to protect its people. According to the Global Research Group, all governments have a right to know how their oil money is being used by companies to cover project costs. Oxfam warned, however, that the companies often seek out varying ways and means to prevent countries and their relevant authorities from knowing too much. Specifically, Oxfam, in a report titled Examining the Crude Deals, said companies tend to look for loopholes in agreements signed with nations or even weaknesses in a country's legislative framework, which they can exploit to keep spending hidden from scrutiny. In other news, CGX Energy Inc. and Frontera Energy Corporation, the joint venture partners in the petroleum prospecting license for the Quarantine oil block offshore Guyana, have invoked the force majeure clause within its operating document following their inability to drill Way 1, its second well, by November 27, 2022, due to circumstances beyond the company's control. Force majeure is a common clause in contracts that essentially frees both parties from liability or obligation when an extraordinary event or circumstance occurs beyond the control of the parties, such as a war, strike, riot, crime, epidemic, or sudden legal changes, prevents one or both parties from fulfilling their obligations under the contract. The joint venture said that the government of Guyana has confirmed that the quarantine license remains in full force, effect, and good standing, while informing that it has also completed their joint operating agreement amendment. In other news, the Irfan Ali-led administration has been repeatedly dodging calls for the release of large mining contracts. The government was pressed earlier this year to make public those contracts it has signed with foreign companies, but has failed to do so. Kaieteur, in particular, following the publication of Guyana's third extractive industries transparency report, has been asking the government officials to make the mining contracts public, to no avail. Since becoming a member of the global body, the report notes that the government agreed to adhere to several requirements. In this case, the EITI requirement 2.4a of the 2019 standard states that Guyana should publicly disclose all mineral agreements entered into force prior the reporting period, in this case 2019. Although the requirements are known to the administration, it continues to make excuses in avoiding the release of these contracts. On Friday, Vice President Bara Jagdeo, at the sidelines of an event at State House, was asked for the fourth time about the release of the mining deals. Jagdeo referred the matter to Minister of Natural Resources Vikram Bharat, who was also at yesterday's event but was nowhere to be found at the conclusion of the interview with the Vice President. Calls to his phone also went unanswered. Guyana's third EITI report was issued in June of this year. After it was published, Jagdeo was confronted about the secret deals at a press conference held at the office of the President. Then, he explained that the large-scale mining contracts in Guyana should be made available to the public should a formal request be made to the Freedom of Information Office. And High Court Judge Gino Prasad on Friday ruled that the challenge to President Ali's suspension of the Police Service Commission will be heard in January 2023. This means that the substantive case of former chairman of the PSC, Paul Slow, will be heard on January 16, 2023. On June 16, 2021, President Ali had sacked the Paul Slow-led commission. Shortly thereafter, Slow and the other commissioners moved to the court to challenge the president's decision. However, the life of the commission subsequently expired. And in other news, a 75-year-old Princess Street, Georgetown woman was on Friday reportedly stabbed to death by her nephew. According to reports, the woman's 50-year-old nephew, who is reportedly mentally ill, allegedly committed the heinous crime. He lived in the lower flat of the two-story house, which Harris also shared with her reputed husband. Police said that after the reputed husband of Harris left for work, she and her nephew reportedly got into an argument in the yard. She reportedly insisted that the man move out from the lower flat of the house. The man reportedly refused. Harris reportedly armed herself with a hammer while her nephew grabbed a knife. The man stabbed Harris in her neck twice before she collapsed and bled to death. The man reportedly made good his escape on foot, and he was seen running from the house. And moving on, the International Decade for People of African Descent Assembly, Guyana, on Friday announced that it has filed legal proceedings against the government in a bid to have its own subvention reinstated. Speaking at the press conference, the National Assembly's attorney, Nigel Hughes, said that the court document examines 3 violations by the government. He said that the organization is seeking an order of mandamus to have the subventions already budgeted for this year to be returned to the organization ahead of the final determination of the matter. Hughes explained that the body had a legitimate expectancy to the subvention based on engagements and agreements made with the previous and current government. The organization was given no reason or notification as to why the funds were seized. And in other news, a police constable attached to the Tactical Service Unit was on Thursday charged with raping a child less than 16 years of age and causing a child under 16 years to engage in sexual activity. The 24-year-old constable, Neil Dukram, of Land of Canaan, East Bank Demerara, was placed on $400,000 bail for both charges when he appeared before Magistrate Alex Moore at the Wim Magistrates Court. Dukram was arrested on September 27th after a video surfaced with him having sex with a child. He was not required to plead to the indictable charges. And to wrap things up, the government of Guyana on Friday morning inked what was dubbed a historic agreement with the U.S. oil company Hess Corporation for the sale of carbon credits the country earned for its massive forest cover. The multi-year agreement is for $37.5 million, reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation. The initiative is a global mechanism that was created by the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in support of the Paris Agreement. Hess is now Guyana's first client, purchasing 30% of the country's carbon credits for a minimum of $750 million. It was explained that the cost of carbon credits can increase, and if this shift occurs, Guyana will benefit more. And that brings us to the end of today's News at Noon. I'm Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening.
Want value for your advertising dollar? Then place your ads on Kaieteur Radio's newscasts. Streamed live on 6 different mediums, reaching hundreds of thousands. Advertise today and watch your dollar grow. Call us